All right, here we are. If you're out in the hallway, let's make your way in and we can get started here for day 3 of Strong Tower 2025. So let me just give you a rundown of what's happening today. We'll have 3 speakers. After each one, we're going to have a little bit of Q&A. After that, we'll have a quick break and then workshops. And after that, we'll have dinner together. And after that, more talks, and then hopefully we'll have the endurance to hold through the evening. Okay, so look forward to what's going on today. Glad you're all here. And let's start with prayer. Father, we just thank you for a place to gather for this conference. We thank you for what you've done in our lives. We ask for an awakening within the church that would help penetrate the darkness of the Muslim world. Use us. Use the teachers that have spent countless hours researching to bring this great content to us. Pray for clarity. Pray for just rich fellowship later on, and just pray for your word to go out stronger than ever. We pray for ministry to Muslims, the ministry, and just the far-reaching effects that it's had, and pray for what more will be coming. Pray you just sustain Pastor George and his efforts to bring the gospel to the Muslim world. Thank you for your son, Jesus, and what he means to us. In Jesus, in his name, amen. Okay, so first up is Dr. Eddie Dalcour speaking to us on Jesus, Son of God or Son of Man. This is something that's very confusing when we're talking to Muslims, isn't it, with them? So, welcome up, Dr. Dalcour. So there's a HDMI cord here. Let's make sure it's good to go here. This one looks like it. Yeah, this one looks like it doesn't fit. Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right, thank you very much. Delighted to talk on this topic, actually, because any subject that has to do with the deity and humanity of Christ, to me, it's very important, because almost every single non-Christian, as I call atheistic religion, denies in some way, shape, or form the deity of Christ and his true humanity. And when we say Jesus is God, we have to say he's God-man. He's not just God. Because if he's just God, any Unitarian we're dialoguing with, a Muslim can just refute that. Well, he died. So we want to, and keep in mind, Unitarian groups like Islam, Muslims, are very ignorant when it comes to Christian doctrine. So they don't know what the incarnation really is. They just heard, Joe down the street explain what the deity of Christ is, and normally a lot of Christians aren't sure themselves how to explain it, so they end up giving a really mushy view on the doctrine of the Trinity. They either separate the persons, or they present this kind of, not because they're oneness, a kind of a oneness view. They're functionally oneness, or when they're defining justification, they're functionally Roman Catholic. Not because they ascribe to that, but they've never been taught adequately what justification is. We were talking about imputation yesterday. Every Christian should understand what imputation is and justification, the gospel. And if we don't have a set foundation of the gospel, let's wait before we go out half-cocked and just say all these things that don't really represent the simplicity and accuracy of what the gospel is. My topic today is Jesus Christ, Son of God, Son of Man. And most of you have dealt with Muslims on this particular topic. And the argument, of course, is they'll appeal to everyone else is called Son of God. Others were called Son of Man. So what makes Jesus deity? Is Ezekiel deity because he's referred to as the Son of Man more than Jesus was? Angels, Adam, Moses, judges, they're all called gods or sons of God. So our task as Christians is to explain the unique way that Jesus utilized that divine title. When he and his apostles, when he utilized this divine title, both titles, both Son of Man, Son of God, and there's other titles, the way he defined it was a very unique way that was tantamount to God the Son. These were divine titles as he used it. This is the basis of why I used to call like Mormons and other groups, non-Christian cults. I would use the word cults or non-Christian world religion. All that's true when you're talking about world religions like Islam or Baha'i or something else. And when you're talking about Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and Oneness Pentecostals, yes, they are non-Christian. They deny essential doctrines. And many would say non-Christian cult. But I really don't use that terminology because theologically, as Paul pointed out, they're atheist. Look what he says in Ephesians 2:12. At that time, you were separated from Christ, because he's talking about pre-converted Ephesians, having no hope and without God in this world. Now, the pre-converted Ephesians had lots of gods. I've been there before. I took my wife, we went to Ephesus one time. It was a cruise. And I saw all the statues, and I understand historically as well, all the gods they had. Paul calls them atheists, the Greek term, atheoi, because they had the wrong God. Any group that has the wrong God, theologically, is an atheist. Muslims are atheists. They're a religion, but they're religious atheists. So is all the other non-Christian world religion. They're religious atheists. We don't have to water it down. Now, I'm not saying you got to just start using that term to them, but theologically, we need to be comfortable with terms that Paul used, referring to people that had gods. They were without the true God. Unitarian starting point is unipersonalism. Unipersonalism, the very starting point of all the arguments is that God exists as one person. One is Pentecostals. All the other Unitarian groups, Muslims, non-Christian Jews, Christadelphians, it goes on and on, embracing the starting point of unipersonalism or Unitarianism. Now, when I say Unitarianism, I'm talking about the belief system, not necessarily the official Unitarian church. And we have to address that starting point, that Unitarian starting point. Oneness Pentecostals believe that Jesus is God. So why do we say they're non-Christian? Well, when they say Jesus is God, in their mind they're Unitarian, that's their belief. The Father, Jesus as the Father is God, and there's only one God, and He's the Father. They're Unitarian. Muslims, Unitarian, one God. One God is always equal to one person. Of all the pronouns and all the terms in the Old Testament, we have a lot of terms that define Him, God, as alone or one. But we can't jump to the assumption that one means one person. One God, one person. They're not tantamount. God is one being. He's one what? One being revealed in three distinct persons. The Trinity is not a complicated doctrine. Don't be afraid to communicate it, but do it simply. You don't have to write diagrams and use analogies. Never use analogies. Stop using analogies. Stop using analogies. They're all flawed. Use the Bible. Always use the Bible, not philosophy. The main starting point causes Muslims and other groups to say, Jehovah's Witnesses as well, Jesus can't be God. Because God is one person, therefore Jesus can't be God, because that would be two gods. That's how they look at a lot of Unitarian groups, that's how they look at the Trinity, as three gods. We have to respond to that. Jesus cannot be God, nor did he ever say, I am God, worship me, because they're Unitarian, there's only one person who is God. Son of God, Son of Man were not titles of deity, thus, for they were just applied all over the place to men and angels, both in the Old and New Testament. Here's an example of the many that were called God or sons of God or God's son. Adam, Israel, Judges, David, he's called the firstborn. Unbelieving Jews, in John chapter 8, they felt they were children of God. Christians, we're sons and daughters of God, are we not? But by adoption. Angels are referred to as sons of God. And as I point out later, Ezekiel was referred to as Son of Man 94 times. Jesus claimed he was the Son of Man 78 times. But Ezekiel, 94 times. So if Jesus said, I am the Son of God or I am God, so what? Everyone was called God or sons of God. That's the challenge that we need to address. Jesus claimed he was the Son of God and Son of Man in a very unique way. And this was understood by both friends and enemies. The unbelieving Jews knew exactly what he meant. When he claimed he was the Son of God and Son of Man, they knew exactly what he meant. John 19:7, we have a law, and by that law you ought to die. Because he, Christ, he himself, reflexive action there, it's a reflexive pronoun where the subject becomes the object. He himself, for himself, by himself, made himself out to be the Son of God. And they wanted to kill him. Now, why did they want to kill Jesus when all these others were called sons of God? They felt they were sons and daughters of God. Everyone was. But why did they want to kill Jesus? And Jesus made other claims that were absolutely and exclusively used by Yahweh and applied to him. We can spend an hour looking at all those claims. Which, when Jesus made these claims, unequivocally denoted ontological, meaning by essence, ontological deity. The claims that Jesus made denoted ontological deity. How do we know? Because they wanted to kill him. That's how. That's one of the simple ways to express what Jesus meant. They wanted to kill him. They weren't sloppy. They knew their law in their mind. Leviticus 24:16, they wanted to kill him. There was other claims that he made that were exclusively used of Yahweh or by him or to him, like the I am, the first and last, and other claims, both in the Old and New Testament. Okay. Oops. Son of God, as I pointed out, is tantamount, the way Jesus claimed it, to God the Son. Now, the Jewish context, in the Jewish mind, Semitic context, to be the son of something frequently meant that you possess that very something. The nature or sharing in that nature, it can also be used in a relational sense. For example, in Ephesians 2:2, and this is a great example through 3, the unsaved are called sons of disobedience. The unsaved people, says Paul, are sons of disobedience. They're not just nice people confused. No, they're sons of disobedience. By nature, children of wrath. That's how Paul defines the non-believer. Paul defines the non-believer way differently than modern evangelism. We want to coddle them. No, Paul says they're children of wrath. They need Christ. They're children of wrath. They possess the very nature of disobedience and wrath. So to be the son of something, had an unequivocal defining context. Believers are sons of God, as pointed out, by adoption. So the unique way that Jesus claimed what warranted death, according to the Jews, the unique way that he claimed to be the Son of God was tantamount to being God the Son. Look at all the references where people affirmed in this way that he was the Son of God. The apostles, disciples, centurion, the angels, demons, and God the Father. God the Father affirms he's God the Son in the prologue of Hebrews, especially in Hebrews chapter 10. And it's a great verse to use, by the way, with all non-Christian Unitarian groups. Hebrews 1, first of all, the prologue of Hebrews, the author makes a contrast between everything created, the angels, heaven and earth, everything created. A contrast between the things created and the eternality of the Son. That is the context of the prologue of Hebrews. It's beautiful. It's so high Christologically. We should always use it. It's self-edifying. Even if you just stay home, it's self-edifying going through this and understanding what the author was doing. Because the Son's presented as the agent of creation in verse 2. He is always the very nature, the exact representation, the character of the Father's nature in verse 3. He made purifications for sin. It's so high theology. And when he gets to verse 6, it's interesting because from 5 onwards, it's as though the author of Hebrews steps back and now he's just quoting the Father. It's beautiful. Verse 6, he commands the Father in the strongest way in the Greek language that's recorded. This commandment that the Father makes is the strongest way to make a commandment. It's in the aorist imperative. Angels, you worship the Son. It says all the angels, the Father says, worship the Son. And this is religious worship. This is not just bowing like you would to a dignitary or something. Worship the Son. All the angels, which show that Jesus was not Michael. But in verse 10, the Father directly addresses the Son and says, you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. And then he goes on. But what the Father does, he quotes Psalm 102. Actually, it's from the Septuagint in Psalm 101, but in our Hebrew text, it's Psalm 102, 25 through 27. Look, these passages define Yahweh. They speak of Yahweh in Psalms as the unchangeable creator of all things. The word for Lord in Hebrews 1:10 is an evocative case. Kuriah, you Lord, who's in verse 8 about the Son, he says. It's the same referential identity. About the Son, he says. And then verse 10, you Lord, Psalm 102, you Yahweh, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. So we see the references of these people, demons, angels, God, and then these people, the apostles, disciples, centurion addressing him as the Son of God in a religious sense, God the Son. In Matthew 14:23 or 33, the disciples, we read this. The disciples came into the boat where Jesus was, and it says they worshiped him. And it's a present participle, they kept saying, you're the Son of God. Notice the action. They worshiped him, and they kept saying, "You're the Son of God." That's religious context. That's God the Son. Creaturely worship's forbidden. So they worshiped him. All right, Son of Man. Now, I gave more details in the workshop yesterday, but this is more of an overview. So let's go to Son of Man. I like that I put this as the title of this passage because it's enormously important. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his soul or life a ransom for the many. The Son of Man died for us. The Son of Man. The two-natured person. Son of Man, Muslims will say, same with Son of God, but we refuted that already, that's just a title that men used, like Ezekiel. Again, just like the Son of God, the way Jesus used it was tantamount to God the Son. They worshiped him. They kept saying, "You're the Son of God." That's not just sons of God by adoption or something else. No, they recognized he was God the Son. I know when I do pastor conferences, I always ask, especially international, I'm going to Nepal in 2 weeks, assuming they got the airport up and running. We do pastor conferences, and even in other places, I always ask the pastors, quit hiding the Trinity. Where is it? Because I ask the question, who here in the last 10 years has ever heard a message on the deity of Christ or the doctrine of the Trinity in the last 10 years at any church? 0 hands, normally. I think one time I got 1 hand. Normally, 0 hands. I always ask the pastors, where is the Trinity? Why aren't you given this? The most important doctrine from Genesis to Revelation. It has to do with our salvation of our souls. We're saved by the triune God. Where'd you put it? Why aren't you teaching it? Why does your audience, why are they so confused when they talk to Muslims? They say the wrong things. Or when they just try to communicate the Trinity. Son of Man saved us. He gave his life for us. Now, statistics, which I find a little interesting. The singular Son of Man, the singular, not sons of men, the singular Son of Man, I counted 107 times in Hebrew and 111, or maybe even possibly in some editions, 112 in a Septuagint. And all of them in the Old Testament are anarthrous, meaning they don't have any articles. Son of Man, not the Son of the Man. In some places, Son of Man was simply a generic term that referred to mankind in general. But again, it was applied to Ezekiel 93 times in Hebrew, 94 times in the Septuagint, and only 1 time, Daniel. Daniel's called Son of Man 1 time. Now, Ezekiel was called Son of Man I believe, in reference to his lowly humanity in contrast to Yahweh, to God. Now, when I hear a lot of people talk about the Son of Man, they'll say it was the Son of Man and primarily, denoting his humanity. I have a problem with that. Not that there's not verses that do denote his humanity, but primarily it denoted his deity. It really did. His deity or hypostatic union, or in the context of pre-existence. Primarily, there's some places, humanity, but primarily, Jesus as God, the Son of God, pre-existing. This is the background. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is really the background of Son of Man. Why do you think the high priest wanted to kill Jesus when he said, "You'll see the Son of Man come in the clouds" in Mark 14? This is it. This is the background, the earliest background, verses 13 to 14, about the Son of Man. He's differentiated from the Ancient of Days, 2 objects of divine worship. And he came up to the Ancient of Days. They're distinct persons. In 14, to him, the Son of Man was given a glory and kingdom, and all the nations according to their kind, and all glory of him. And the Septuagint has a participle here, worshiping him. Just like the men in the boat. Worshiping him. This is the background of Jesus' claims to be the Son of Man. All right, New Testament. In the singular, Son of Man, not sons of man, 84 times in the whole New Testament. According to the critical text, 70 or 84 times. Every single place was in the singular was referring to Christ. Every single time. 80 times in the Gospels, and 79 of those times are actually articular, meaning the Son of the Man. This includes the 2 times where the crowd repeated Jesus' claim to be the Son of Man in 1234. How can you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man? Remember Jesus asked that question to the blind man, do you believe in the Son of Man? That should be our question, the non-believers. Hey, do you believe in the Son of Man? What do you think of the Christ? I love those questions to open up dialogue. Do you believe in the Son of Man? Well, we do, and we worship him. John 3:14, this was referring to this, because Jesus said in John 3:14, which prompted the response here in 12:34, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man may be lifted up. They didn't like it. There's 4 occurrences outside the Bible. Stephen refers to Christ as the Son of Man. Something very interesting, in the Gospels, I mentioned 78 times Jesus claimed to be the Son of Man. 78 times. If you add up, that's including the parallels. And not one time did anyone dare to address him as Son of Man. It's just very interesting. They address him as Son of God, Peter's great confession, which is our confession, as the Christ, but never, nobody, friends nor enemies, but none of his apostles, not in the Gospels. 4 occurrences outside the Gospel. Hebrews 2:6 and twice in Revelation, and it's in Arthurus, meaning no article. I believe John was probably alluding to Daniel, because it's the same phrase, one like the Son of Man. And it is well accepted as being derived from Daniel 7. As mentioned, primarily had to do with his deity, this title, Son of Man, especially in his pre-existence. It was referred, there are times in his humanity, but primarily deity, like this one. Foxes have holes and birds in the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Of course, that's a humanity reference. Here's where we have the whole hypostatic union. He's before the high priest, and the high priest asks, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One, or the Son of God? I think Mark said Blessed One, and I believe Matthew says Son of God. I love his answer because Jesus adds to it. He says, yes, I am, meaning yes, I'm the Christ, yes, I'm the Son of God. I'm the Son of God. And he wasn't talking just mere adoption. I'm the Christ, the Messiah, and that's who I am. And then he adds this. Look what he adds. And Jesus said, I am the Christ, Son of God, and you will see the Son of Man, sitting at the right hand of power. Pause there. Notice that in Jesus' most significant claims of being God, he mentions the Father in the same breath. Extremely difficult for a oneness Pentecostal to grapple with, because the Son affirms his deity in the same breath as he mentions the Father, sitting at the right hand of a distinct person, the power, the Father. And then he says, you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power, coming in the clouds of heaven. And of course, the king or the high priest, this is blasphemy, Leviticus 24:16. Blasphemy was not claiming you're an old man. Blasphemy was not, just being kind of crazy. It was claiming that it's blaspheming God by claiming that you're God. So he's the Son of God here. He claims he's the Son of God. He's the Christ, Son of God, Son of Man. He adds that. No misunderstanding. This is a great passage to use. And I always ask, especially Muslims, why do they want to kill him? If this was just meant, how Ezekiel or how the Jews are sons of God or Adam or anyone else, why do the Jews want to kill him for claiming he's the Son of God and the Son of Man? 8:28, so Jesus said, when you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am. This is one of the unpredicated I am statements or claims that Christ made. When I say unpredicated, meaning the phrase ego, eimi, does not have anything after it. No predicate. Different than I am the gate, I am the door, I am the shepherd. All those are predicates. Here, I am what? Just I am. There's no stated predicate in these I am statements, and not just in John, in Matthew 14:27, in Mark 6:50, in John 6:20, and a whole string of them in John 8, and John 13:19. And when the guards in John 18 came to him 3 times, it's recorded, I am, and they all fell back. So it's not just in John, as Muslims erroneously think. Jehovah's Witnesses too, right? They think it's only in John. They think it's only in John 8:58. No, there's a whole string of I ams. And these are the ones recorded. He could have claimed this many other times. Then he says, he claims he's the eternal God because in the Old Testament, I don't use the Septuagint of Exodus 3:14 because it's not a direct correspondence to the unpredicated I am. It is a divine title. It's really 2 divine titles. If you look in the Greek of 3:14, it's very interesting because in the Greek it records Jesus, or the angel of the Lord actually saying, I am, ego, eimi, I am haon, the one timelessly existing. You have 2 titles in one. But the direct correspondence with the unpredicated I am starts in Deuteronomy 32:39, Isaiah 41:4. By the way, Isaiah 41:4 has also the first and last that Yahweh claims he is. The I am and the first and last. Isaiah 43:10, 44:6, 45:18, or 46:4 and 45:18. These are the unpredicated I am claims that Yahweh. So of course they wanted to kill him, but look what he says. He says, I am. When you lift up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am, and I do nothing on my own, but I say these things as the Father, a distinct person. He mentions the Father in the same breath of claiming eternality. I'm the eternal God, and yeah, there's another person, the Father. He instructed me. Most of the references to the Son of Man are in the pre-existence. Now, of course, I just did a few. I like John 3:13. John 6:62. What if you see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? What if you do? He's pre-existing. And he's eternally pre-existing, not like the Jehovah's Witnesses think that he pre-existed as Michael the Archangel. No, Jesus claimed he eternally pre-existed. The Son of Man is frequently identified with salvation, as we already saw. And in John 3:14 and 15, just as Moses lifted up the serpent, that's the context of 16. Stop taking 16 in an isolation and not considering the context. It starts in the wilderness. Just as you see just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up in order that everyone who believes in him will have eternal life. If you believe in the Son of Man, you will have eternal life. He gives eternal life. We also see this in John 6:24. And as I pointed out, he was worshipped. The Son of Man's worshipped. I like the blind man, the account. Do you believe in the Son of Man? And the blind man did, and he worshipped him. All the angels worshipped him. The men of the boat worshipped him. So lastly, the unique way that Jesus claimed to be the Son of God and Son of Man were understood clearly by both his friends and enemies. Not as merely like Adam or Moses was called God, or the Jews felt they were sons and daughters of God. No, it had a reference of ontological deity, and the Jews understood it in John 10:30. I and the Father, literally, I and the Father, one thing we are. They picked up stones to kill him. Why do you want to kill me? What good work? Not for a good work, the Jews said. Because you being a man, here's how it literally reads in Greek. You being a man, make you yourself God. You make yourself God. Son of God was tantamount to God the Son. So, For us, I think it's a great, not only proclamation of the gospel regarding the person of Christ, but it's a great apologetic, because the Jews understood what he was claiming. And theologically, Son of Man, Son of God, was tantamount to the eternal God, distinct from the Father. Okay, so with that, is Mr. Eric coming up? Huh? What?
Yeah, so we have time for a couple of questions. Anyone has something to add? How do we communicate that?
How do we communicate that Muslims? Well, first of all, we have to understand that's a good question. There's no cookie cutter way. So you want to, when the dialogue starts, and again, I've started many dialogues by asking that question, what do you think of the Christ? You get past all the minutia and all the other stuff. What do you think of the Christ? Because it's through him alone that there's eternal life. So what do you think of the Christ? That will open the door to talk about the person of Christ. And we know the arguments that they're going to give, but it doesn't matter. We have the gospel. We have the power of God on our side. Proclaim, well, the Son of Man was worshipped in the boat by the disciples. Only God is worshipped. Why did they worship the Son of Man? Why did they want to kill Jesus for claiming that he's the Son of Man? Personally, I found that question asking is a very effectual, not only in proclamation, but effectual apologetic. Why did the Jews want to kill? My first debate I ever had with a Muslim, that's the question I asked. Why did the Jews want to kill Christ? Have the passages ready why they wanted to kill him. And the answer I got from the Muslim was because he was claiming to be this moral guy. It was really a goofy answer. And I read the text. No, 19:7, right? We have a law, and by that law you ought to die, because he made himself out to be the Son of God, and then the Son of Man when he claimed it to the high priest. The priest said, I want to kill him. I want to kill him. So why did the Jews want to kill Christ and have the passages in hand? Because he claimed he was a Son of God, God the Son. And again, the Muslims think Son of God was just a generic title. No. Then if that's the case, why did they want to kill him? Again, why do they want to kill him? John 10:30, why did they want to kill him? So I think I've seen more problems with them answering that question, in spite of their arguments against the text. That's not, what you have in your hand, all the blather they give you. Never underestimate the power of proclaiming the gospel. However you do it, never underestimate that proclamation. But that's how I would do it. Question asking, and ask about the Son of God. Why do they want to kill him? Why do they want to kill him for claiming he's the Son of Man? It's a good question. Questions. That's how I would do it. Or why do they worship the Son of Man? Yeah, in some places, it's very interesting because some would ask the question, why do you even use that term? Some would see that, why he used the Son of Man, as a refutation to the docetic Gnostics. What's a docetic Gnostic? Can anyone tell me what do they believe? The docetic Gnostics. Yeah, simply. They denied all matter. Colossians is a direct anti-Gnostic refutation. Gnostic comes from a word gnosis, that means knowledge. They felt they had supreme knowledge, and you had to get that to be delivered from this evil flesh. Or they believed, the docetic, which means to seem, believed that all this stuff here just seemed to appear. It doesn't really exist. You know who the closest group is to the Gnostics today? Christian Science. I don't know why they brush their teeth if everything's illusory. But the fact is, Son of Man, some would say he claimed to Son of Man so many times in some slight refutation of one of the heresies of the day, Gnosticism. Son of Man. But he used it more in his deity. But yes, he did use it in his humanity. Foxes have nowhere to lay his head, neither does the Son of Man. And there's a few others in his humanity, but mostly in his deity, hypostatic union, or pre-existence.
Okay, I'm sure more of you do have questions, but just feel free to ask during the breaks. Speakers are talking, and answer the topic. So, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Dr. Okay, you saw him up here Friday, and again, Lance Norman is going to speak about reaching the gospel, reaching the Muslims through Jesus.
Okay. There we go. All right. So I'm Vance Nordman. My wife and I were with the Campus Crusade for Christ for 40 some odd years. We retired a few years ago. Now we're emeritus staff, which means we used to get paid to be good. Now we're good for nothing. So we're still volunteering with the Jesus Home. I've been with the Jesus Home for more than 27 years. And my main involvement in reaching out to Muslims with the Jesus Home was when we lived in Egypt for 10 years, lived in Russia. We were involved in reaching Muslims a little bit in both those places, but especially when I came with the Jesus Home, we did a lot of work with showing the Jesus film, giving away Jesus film to Arab Muslims and Saudis and people like that in Saudi Arabia that would come to London. So we would go to London and pass out Jesus film and New Testaments on the street, and that's still going on. Praise the Lord. So I'm going to talk about using the Jesus Film to reach Muslims. Okay. How many have you heard of the Jesus Film? How many of you have heard of the Jesus Film? Okay, good. Well, most of you know what it is, but the Jesus Film is based on the Gospel of Luke, and it's a 2-hour film, and it's based entirely on the Gospel of Luke. It was all filmed in the Holy Land, and according to Google AI, so this way you can go look it up yourself if you forget. It says that Jesus Film has been viewed by 10 billion times across multiple platforms, including television, apps, and in-person showings, leading to over 670 million recorded decisions to follow Christ, and the establishment of hundreds of thousands of new churches since its 1979 release. It holds a Guinness World Records title for most translated film with translations to over 2,230 languages. So that's what the Jesus Film is. Now, the power of the Jesus Film, I like to think of the Jesus Film as kind of like looking at a jigsaw puzzle. People hear about Jesus, especially non-Christians. If they don't have a Christian background, they hear information about Jesus, but they're like little parts of a jigsaw puzzle. They get a little information here, they get a little information there, and it's kind of like all this information, but they have trouble figuring out how do you put it together. And it's really hard to solve a jigsaw puzzle if you don't have the box top. So I feel like the Jesus Film kind of gives the big picture. I remember when I first saw the movie Gandhi, about Mahatma Gandhi, and I'd heard about him, little things here and there, and I wasn't quite sure who he was. Some people thought he was a god or something. But when I saw the movie, it was like, oh, that's who this guy is. He was in South Africa. He was involved in the independence movement. He was a spiritual person. But it was like so different. And also another movie that I remember seeing was the movie The Message, or the Muhammad, Messenger of God. How many of you have heard of that or seen that movie? I went and saw that movie when it came out in the theaters with a Persian friend of mine. And it was like, to be honest, I was kind of shocked. Because I think we all think religions are kind of like our religion. And I watch that movie and I go, Muhammad is more of a warlord in that movie than, he's like Jesus, going around, preaching and things like that. And I remember after I saw the movie, I talked to my Persian friend and I said, is that what you believe? She said, yeah, that's what I was taught growing up. And she actually had come to Christ at that time. But anyway, so I feel like that seeing a film helps people kind of put it in context. And sometimes the reason Muslims have trouble understanding things is that you really need the big picture for things to make sense. And it's hard to explain complex things, but when they get to watch a film for 2 hours in their own language, they really get the big picture, and it really gives a foundation for what you're going to talk to them about later. It's based on the Bible translation for their language. So whatever language they're speaking, when they're watching the Jesus film, we work with Wycliffe Bible translators and other translation people every time we do the Jesus film. So basically, Jesus is saying what's in the Bible in their language in a way that's culturally relevant to them, which they will understand. And everything Jesus says comes directly from the Bible, mainly from the Gospel of Luke. Just a little story about the impact of the Jesus film. I told you about this friend of mine who I went and saw the movie with. She had actually come to Christ through watching the Jesus film on campus in Texas. But I have another friend named Ellie Davidian, and she came to America from Iran. She was going to college, and some Persians organized a film showing of the Jesus film on campus, I think in Farsi. And she went to it, and she watched the film, and then she signed up that she wanted to talk to him later on because she said, well, it was a good film, but they'd made a bunch of mistakes there. You know, like Jesus was crucified, and he wasn't really crucified. So she started meeting with them to help clear up their misunderstandings because she could see they were a little bit misguided. And anyway, so now she has a big ministry. She's on, Persian television, and she's had a huge ministry for years. She travels in Europe and in America, reaching out to Muslims. Another one who you guys heard yesterday was Mariama. Mariama, I don't know if you've heard her testimony, but she was really in distress. She was in a parking lot, and she was just thinking, God, what's going on with my life, and why are these things happening? And she looked across the parking lot, and she saw a cross on this building, and she thought, I'm going to go over and find out what the meaning of the cross is. And she drove over to the church and went into the church and said, what is the meaning of the cross, to the secretary? And she said, let me get you the pastor. So she got the pastor, and as the pastor met with her, he showed her the Jesus film in English, but he showed it to her, and that was part of her process of coming to Christ. And another story I want to tell is my wife one time was, my wife and I give away the Jesus film all the time to everybody we meet all over the place. But anyway, she was in Macy's with her mother one time, and the clerks in Macy's seemed to be in Orange County. They're all Persian. So anyway, she always had carried around some Persian DVDs, and she gave one to this woman, young lady, and she got really excited to receive it. So she thought, she gave her phone number, which wasn't something she normally did, but she did it, forgot about it. A couple years later, I think a year later or so, we got a call and to our house on Sunday afternoon, and this lady wanted to speak to my wife, and she said, I'm sorry I didn't call you sooner. I lost your phone number, but I just found it, and I wanted to invite you to come to my baptism. And her husband and her son were all baptized in this Persian convert church that's probably about 10 minutes away from our house. And we live in San Clemente. It was in San Juan Capistrano. So just kind of the impact of the film on people's lives. Another one I want to tell you another thing about sharing Jesus with immigrants. People love to receive something in their own language. And just to give you an illustration, I was in a hotel one time in somewhere on the beach. I forget. My wife and I went away for a weekend. And we're in the hotel, and the clerk was Indian, which is not unusual. And so I had some Indian DVDs in my car, and all of the DVDs we used to put out had the languages written on the front. So I brought it in, I handed it to her, and she looked at it, and she said, well, we're Muslims. And then she said, it's an Urdu. Oh, thank you very much. And then about an hour later, I came back, and her husband was at the front counter, and he said, thank you for that Urdu DVD. People love to get something in their own language. And not only do they love to get something in their own language, when they hear something in their own language, they understand it a lot better when they hear it in a language that's their second language. But I want to tell some stories about some other things. Like I met a guy at A&W a couple weeks ago. I was at A&W in Salt Lake City, and this guy's name was Angel. And we were talking, and I gave him the Jesus film, and I said, do you speak Spanish? And he said, well, no, he didn't, but his grandmother spoke Spanish, but actually she spoke Nahuatl, which is an Aztec language. So I went under the Jesus film. Nancy, would you go get some of the international student cards? Because I'm going to pass them out here in a little bit. And I forgot to ask you to do that beforehand. So we need enough for everybody to have one or two. Anyway, so I looked up all the languages in Mexico, which on the card I give you can easily do. And I found not only Nahuatl, there's like 5 or 6 of them. He said, oh, she speaks Central Nahuatl. So I gave him the card. He was all excited about taking that to his grandmother. Another person was tell the story of another person about immigrants. I have an Arab pastor who gave out the Jesus film all the time. He still is giving out Jesus film, but he broke down on the side of the freeway one time, and he called service, and they came, and then he needed to get an Uber to take him somewhere. And this Uber driver showed up, and he was Persian. So he had the Jesus DVD that we had at the time that had 16 languages on it, and he gave it to the guy, and the guy didn't seem very interested. He just threw it on the top of the dashboard and said thank you, and he left. And a year later, the Arab pastor was at an international Christmas festival for people from different countries. It was at a hotel or somewhere, and they were having dinner. And so this guy comes up to him and says, oh, so nice to see you, Pastor. Oh, and he was, he's a pastor, so he doesn't, everybody that comes up to him, he doesn't remember them. Oh, he says, you don't remember me, do you? He said, no. He said, I'm the Uber driver that you gave the DVD to. He said, I took it home and I threw it on the coffee table in my house, and my wife picked it up and watched it the next day. And when I came home from work, she said, you have to watch this movie. And he said, no, I don't want to watch that. So she kept after him, and after a few days, he finally agreed to watch the movie. And the wife had prayed the prayer to receive Christ at the end of the movie, and he prayed to receive Christ, and they were involved in a Persian church at that time. And recently, I was up in Big Bear with my wife, and we went hiking, and some people came around the corner, and they were speaking some language, and I didn't quite catch what it was. And so when they walked up, I said, hey, what language were you speaking? And the guy was obviously from the Middle East, but he said Chinese, and he was just joking around. So he said, no, it was Chaldean. And I said, oh, are you guys from El Cajon? And he laughed, no, but he knew that. Okay, how come he knows all the Chaldeans are in El Cajon? So we talked a little bit. I gave him the Jesus card and all the different Arabic dialects, and because he also obviously speaks Arabic. So anyway, that was a great opportunity. Then we kept walking in this trail. This wasn't even a long trail. And another couple came up, and we were talking to them about the trail and stuff. And then I said, where are you guys from? And they said, oh, we're from Laguna Woods. And I said, yeah, but you guys have an accent. Where are you originally from? Oh, we're from Russia. Well, my wife and I actually lived in Russia too. So we started speaking. We spoke to the guy from Chaldean guy in Arabic a little bit, and then we spoke to them in Russian a little bit. And then we offered them a copy of the Jesus film in Russian, and they were happy to receive it. So some of you probably remember this DVD. This was, George was involved with the whole development of this thing, what languages we had on it. Goes back a few years. But we actually distributed 5 million DVDs. Our original goal was to give out 1 million to Muslims. We ended up giving out 2 million to Muslims and 3 million to other immigrant groups. But we ended up producing 21 different DVDs with up to 24 languages on each of them. But DVDs are rarely used today, as you probably know. If people say they don't have DVD players. So to make it easier to share Jesus in the digital age, we created these gift cards. And that's what we're passing out right now. And this is the one I'm passing out to you. This is like it says Jesus in 2,000 languages. We call it our International Jesus gift card. And basically, because it takes you to a menu of all the languages on the DVD. So if somebody scans the QR code, or if they go to freejesusfilm.org, and that's something you can just remember, freejesusfilm.org. So if you don't even have the film with you or something, if you can remember that, just say, hey, go to freejesusfilm.org. So you can get to the film. And basically, this is a picture of what looks like on a computer, but if you have a smartphone, the website's designed to be smartphone friendly, so you get the same information. What you get is all these languages in their own native script. Now, that's not very helpful for you because you don't know how to find those scripts. But if you're an Arabic speaker, you immediately recognize the Arabic. If you're a Chinese speaker, you immediately see the Chinese. If you're a Hindi speaker, you immediately see the Hindi, or Vietnamese, or well, all these different languages, they just stand out to you. And so the purpose of the card is to make it easy for the non-believer to find his language, not for you to find it for him necessarily. But you can always search for the language. There's a search button there. And you can also search by country, and then it gives you all the languages in that country. So that first flag on the bottom left there, is Afghanistan. If you click on that one, you'll get all the language of Afghanistan. And so then once you click on your language, you get a screen kind of like this. Now, basically, you get the opportunity to do a short clip from the film, a 3-minute clip. And reason we do that is that people will be hesitant. If you say, oh, there's a 2-hour film, watch it on this card, it's like, oh yeah, I'll do that someday, and they'll throw it in their closet or something, or they'll put it in a drawer. But if you say it's a 3-minute clip, they might, oh, okay, well, maybe I can just look at that. And what the clip that it shows on almost all the DVD, all the Jesus film ones is the Sermon on the Mount, a 3-minute clip from the Sermon on the Mount. And then underneath it, it says, read the above story in the Bible. What it does is it takes them to the Sermon on the Mount in the Gospel of Luke, because it's taken from the Gospel of Luke for the Jesus film, and in their language on YouVersion. So not only can they read it in their own language, but they can also download the YouVersion app, because they give you the option to download the app. Then the next option is watch the complete Jesus film from the beginning, because our goal is to help them see the Jesus film, but we really want to get them into the Scriptures. The Scriptures are what's going to change their life. So you're not only giving them the Jesus film, you're giving them a copy of the Bible when you do this. And then this is a real long page, so I had to put it on separate pages. It also has answers to common questions in about, I think, 30 different languages. So all the major languages are there, and it's a ministry done by Campus Crusade for Christ, where we have called everystudent.com, where they just answer common questions students have and articles about them. I Want to Follow Jesus is basically the 4 spiritual laws, gospel presentation in their language. And ask a question, they can actually type in a question, and it goes to our ministry with Crew, where we have people that follow up these questions online. Then it says, watch a film about Jesus from a woman's perspective. That's the Magdalena film that the Jesus film has. And then the other one, watch a film about Jesus from a children's perspective. That's the children's film. And if these films are available in their language, that option shows up. And if they aren't, the option doesn't show up. And then all of them always have a short film about faith. And that's a 3-minute presentation that's basically an evangelistic presentation. And there's multiple different ones we're using because different languages, different presentations are more appropriate. But they're all basically presentations of the gospel. Then it can also see the Christmas story and the Easter story. And then it says they can actually share, and it gives them a link they could share it with if they want to use the link, which is go.jesusfilm.org/English. If you write go.jesusfilm.org/ any language name, you get that language. The only exceptions are when you have multiple dialects, because we have to put every language has its own dialect thing. But basically, you just go go.jesusfilm.org Arabic, you get Arabic. Go.jesusfilm.org Chinese, you get Mandarin. Go.jesusfilm.org Korean, you get Korean. And then you can also share this on Facebook or on X or Twitter. And then the bottom thing is just, you can go back to the language menu. So what I'd like you to do is take some time to actually practice doing this. And if you would pair up with somebody next to you, and if you're sitting all by yourself, you might have to move. So, but pair up to somebody next to you, and then the person on the right, offer the card to the person on the left. So we're starting with the person on the right. And pretend the person on the left is like a store clerk, or waitress or waiter or whatever. And just say one of these things. And I think those are nice and big. You can see those. I'd like to give you a gift. It's a free movie. And since it says Jesus right on the front, you don't really have to explain what the movie's about. Or you could say, here's a free movie you can watch on your phone, or here's a movie about Jesus in over 2,000 languages, and then just offer them the card. So I'll let you do that now. Okay, now you can switch and let the other person try it. Okay, I think you can see that's pretty easy to do. I don't think it takes too much practice. But I want to give you an assignment. You have a card now or two, and I want to give you an assignment to give this card away in the next 24 hours. You know? You're going to meet somebody in the next 24 hours and just say, hey, I'd like to give you a gift, and offer it to them. And now, people almost never say no to me. I mean, it's like, no, my experience has been everybody likes it. I assume they're going to like it. But I want to tell you one story. I remember when we first started this ministry with DVDs, we had just started the ministry. I had a few DVDs in my car that were in Arabic, and I knew that there was this gas station where there was this Arab that worked there. And I was going to be stopping at that gas station. I thought, I need to give that guy a DVD. And I remember thinking, he might be offended. He might not like it. But I've been in the ministry long enough to know I don't listen to that voice. No, I don't listen to that voice. That's not the Lord's voice. Anyway, so I got the DVD, and I picked up a New Testament, put it in my pocket, and I walked in fear and trembling. And he was like 14 years old, this guy, 14, maybe 15. And I went up there and I said, hey, I'd like to give you a gift. And I handed it to him when I was paying for my gas. And he looked at the cover, and he said, oh, thank you very much. And then I thought, oh, you know, I have an Arabic New Testament in my pocket. Would you like it? So I pulled it out and gave it to him. He said, yeah, thank you. So then about 2 weeks later, I happened to be at that gas station, which is up in Visalia. I don't usually go there. But I thought, I wonder what happened if he watched it. And I went into the gas station to pay, and his older brother was there behind him, like 21 years old. And I thought, ooh, I wonder if his brother is not going to be happy that I gave him that DVD. So I was kind of thinking about it. There was a guy in front of me in line, and I'm thinking about it. Then I get in line, and I'm standing there wondering what to do. And the guy looks at me and says, hey, you're the guy that gave me the DVD. I go, yeah, what'd you think of it? He said, it was great. I watched it twice. And then his older brother says, I'm watching it for the third time. And then they went on to tell me how they'd learned all about Jesus in Yemen, and they knew all about him and everything. But Muslims love to get the Jesus film because they love Jesus, and you know, it's like really easy to give the Jesus film to Muslims. I mean, I've never met people who respond better than Muslims to receiving the Jesus film. Muslims are the ones that tell me, I've watched it twice, 3 times, you know. I don't meet other people telling me that, but the Muslims, I hear that story all the time. So I just want to encourage you that they're very willing to receive that. And, hey, it opens in a conversation, right? You gave them this card about it. You can either then talk to them more about stuff or have questions about Jesus, or maybe you see them later on, you can say, hey, did you watch the movie? What did you think? So use it as an opportunity to open a door to have more ministry. Such some ideas for sharing the gift card with immigrants. If you meet somebody you suspect is an immigrant who speaks a foreign language and you aren't sure what it is, just ask them, do you speak a language other than English? Sometimes I make the mistake. I was telling you the other day about this girl who was in Walmart, and I said, where are you from? But I don't like to use that one, because where you're from, I always hear things like, the Indians tell me they're from New Jersey, and the Russians tell me they're from Laguna Hills, you know. So you say, but if you say, do you speak a language other than English? And I was in this Subway restaurant, and this guy, I figured he was maybe he's Hispanic or black. I wasn't quite sure what he was. And I gave him the card, said, here, I'd like to give you a gift. And he said, okay, thank you. And I said, do you speak a language other than English? He goes, yeah. I said, what? He said, Punjabi. So you never know what the person's going to tell you. So that's better than asking where you are. And after they tell you what it is, just say, I have a movie in your language. You know. And the nice thing about the international Jesus card, the international card you have, it just starts with a menu. So it's easy for them to find their language. It doesn't start with English and then say, all the DVDs that are out there, a lot of them start with a different language. The Arabic one starts with Arabic. The Hindi one starts with Hindi. The Japanese starts with Japanese, you know. But then they always have the option, change the language. But rather than have them push that change the language button, the one I gave you just starts with a menu of languages. But if you do happen to have a card in their particular language, that's even better. Like that lady I met in the place where she saw Urdu, and she said, oh, that's an Urdu. So if you're working with a particular group of people, pick up some Arabic or whatever cards you need back in the back. These are some examples of the different cards we have. We got Arabic, Hindi, Farsi. I don't know if I have Hindi and I have Gujarati, and I don't read those languages, but these are some different examples. But and if you happen to use this Arabic card, what it does, it doesn't start with Arabic, standard Arabic. It gives them lists of all the Arabic dialects, because Arabs love to get the film in their own dialect. So that's a really nice thing about that. It even has Jordanian and Lebanese sign language on it. So we have a display in the back. Come by and pick up all the cards you want. And I heard this verse, a paraphrase of this verse, Colossians 1:28, a long time ago. And I always loved this, and I've tried to make it my motto. So everywhere we go, we talk to all who will listen, warning them and teaching them as best we can. So I try to make it my motto. Everywhere we go, we talk to everybody who will listen. Everywhere I go, I give out the Jesus film to everybody who will listen. And you know, I literally buy these cards 1,000 at a time, and I'm always having to reorder them. That's how many we're giving away. And I have in my pocket, I carry this little thing with my credit cards, and I have several different cards in here. I have the Jesus film, the international one, the English one, the Magdalena, the children's. I have the Arabic one, I have the Indian one. And when I'm going certain places, if I'm traveling, I always carry a lot of Indian ones because a lot of hotels have Indian clerks. And if I'm traveling, you know, it depends on where you're going. You kind of know. When I'm in Minneapolis, you have to get some Somali ones for there. So thank you very much. And if you have questions, I'll answer your questions now.
I know you're giving them away free, but how much would it cost for 1,000?
Oh, for 1,000? You know, I don't know, because we have Jesus Film Shop sells them. I don't sell them. I just give them away. And I don't remember how much 1,000 is, even though I buy them that way all the time. I think they might cost 10 cents a piece or something. I don't know. You know, I don't, sorry. It's terrible.
Just the one simple question, you know, you send a card like this. I have a lot of Muslim friends that I talk to daily. Is there any way that I can send this to Muslim friends through social media?
Yeah, you just, well, first of all, you can go on there and you can post it on your own website through social media, but all you have to do is send the URL that's on there through your social media. Just look at that URL and put it on there and send it to them. They click on it, it go right to that language. So yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. And the nice thing is that if they like it, they can share it on their social media. So.
Okay, we're going to have to move along here. Thank you, Vance. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, how many Qurans are there? Sister Rachel is going to present now, and the topic is challenging the narrative of perfect preservation. Should just need a second to set up.
Okay, hi everyone. How's everyone doing? Okay, great. So how many of you, when you've talked to Muslims, they tell you the Quran is perfectly preserved since the time of Muhammad? Raise your hand. Yeah, like all of your hands. That's a lot of people. But before we get into it, I just want to share our goal in polemics is taken from 2 Corinthians 10, verses 4-5, which says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God, for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into the captivity to the obedience of Christ." So our goal is to destroy the false trust that they have in the Quran, in order that they might question what they've been taught and think, oh, then there might be something to Christianity, to this Jesus that I've heard about. So what does Islam claim about the Quran? Well, Muslims claim that the Quran is the only religious sacred text that has been in circulation for a lengthy period and yet remains as pure as the day it was revealed. Nothing has been added, removed, or modified from it since its revelation over 1400 years ago. Not only has the Quran been preserved in written form, but also in the hearts of men, children, and women. Today, millions of people have memorized the Quran from cover to cover, and they cite from the Quran, chapter 15, verse 9, "We have without doubt sent down the message, and we will certainly guard it from corruption." This pamphlet is very common in mosques. They give it out a lot, and this is the kind of information that they're giving to non-Muslims who haven't studied really about this. This is a very famous commentary on the Quran. It's called Tafhim al-Quran by Maududi. And in it, he says, "The Quran that we possess today corresponds exactly to the edition which was prepared on the orders of Abu Bakr, and copies of which were officially sent on the orders of Uthman to various cities and provinces. If someone detects even any discrepancy, even in a single letter or syllable, he should inform the whole world of his great discovery." He also says, "The Quran as we know it today is identical with the Quran which Muhammad set before the world. This is an unquestionable, objective, historical fact." And he also says, "To doubt historical facts like these is a sign of stark ignorance, not a mark of erudition and scholarship." So these are very high claims. Let's see if they hold up to scrutiny. Again, chapter 15, verse 9 is what Muslims trust in, that it says God has a promise that the Quran is preserved and that he will be its guardians. And also in the Quran, it says, "In fact, this is a glorious Quran recorded in a preserved tablet," or in a preserved tablet. So this idea of a preserved tablet, also Muslims trust that the Quran is preserved on it. What is the preserved tablet? In Yasser Qadhi's book, he says, "The Quran, the speech of Allah, is written on the Lawh Mahfuz, or preserved tablet, which is with Allah. It was written in the Lawh Mahfuz before the creation of the heavens and earth. It also is a tablet upon which all things that will happen from the creation of heavens and earth until the end of time are written. Included in the preserved tablet is the text of the Quran." And at the bottom, you can see it says, "It is in a place that guarantees its safety." So Muslims have this idea that it's written on this tablet. It was written before everything else was created. And that's why it's always going to be safe. Like nothing in creation can touch it. However, on June 8th, 2020, the one that we just read in his book, Yasser Qadhi said that the standard narrative about the preservation of the Quran has holes in it. What is he talking about? Well, before we can really understand what are the holes, let's see what the narrative is. So in Muhammad's life, the Quran was not compiled. After Muhammad died, first Caliph Abu Bakr sent for Zayd ibn Thabit. Why did he send for Zayd ibn Thabit, Muhammad's scribe? Well, Umar came to him and said, "There are many reciters of the Holy Quran were killed on the day of the battle of Yamama, and I'm afraid that these casualties may increase, whereby a large part of the Quran may be lost. So he collected these pieces of the Quran which were written on scraps of different things. They were written on leafless stalks of the date palm tree and pieces of leather and hides, and from the stones and from the chests of men, meaning people who memorized the Quran. He wrote it in a manuscript, and it remained with Abu Bakr, first caliph, until he died, and then it remained with Umar, second caliph, until he died, and then with Hafsa, the daughter of Umar. Now we come to third caliph, Uthman. So one of the companions, Hudayfa, came to Uthman at the time when the people of Sham, which is Syria, and the people of Iraq were waging war to conquer Armenia and Azerbaijan. Hudayfa was afraid of their differences in the recitation of the Quran. Wait, I thought there's only one Quran. Why are there differences in their recitation? So he said to Uthman, O chief of the believers, save this nation before they differ about the book, as Jews and Christians did before. So Uthman sent to Hafsa saying, so remember, Hafsa had the Quran that Abu Bakr compiled. So he said, send us the manuscripts so that we may compile the Quran materials in perfect copies and return the manuscripts to you. So then Uthman ordered 4 people. 3 of the people, Abdullah bin Azubair, Sa'id bin al-As, and Abdurrahman bin Harith bin Hisham were Quraysh. Zayd bin Thabit was not Quraysh. So when he had the 4 people rewriting the manuscripts in perfect copies, he said to them, in case the 3 Quraysh disagree with Zayd on any point in the Quran, then write the Quran in the dialect of the Quraysh, because the Quran was revealed in their tongue. So we can see the Quran is revealed in only one dialect, Quraysh dialect. This is the tribe of Muhammad. Then, when they had written many copies, Uthman sent to every Muslim province 1 copy of what they had copied, and ordered that all other Quranic materials, whether written in fragmentary manuscripts or whole copies, be burned. So we can see this is destroying all of the evidence. If it was all the same, why would you need to burn what was there? It's a little suspicious. He's burning the evidence. What happened to Abu Bakr's codex? 5th Caliph Marwan wanted to eliminate this mushaf or codex since the Uthmanic mushaf was sufficient, but Hafsa refused to hand it over. Then when she died, the reason he destroyed it. And then he said, the only reason I did this because all that is in this mushaf has been written and preserved in Uthman's. So I feared that after some time, people would doubt the truthfulness or veracity of this mushaf. Therefore, to prevent these doubts, I burnt it. So here's a second burning. It's lost forever. Can you imagine if the Christians burned the earliest copies, the earliest manuscripts? Like, for example, P51, P39, like, that would be very bad if we burned our earliest manuscripts. But here we have earliest manuscripts of Quran being burnt by the Muslims. I don't think they cherished the word of God at that time. Uthman's codices. Okay, how many were there? So you always hear the Muslims, they're going to talk about the Uthmanic Rasim, which is the consonantal text. We're going to see what that is. They're always saying there's only one Rasim, there's only one. However, we're going to see that there's many. So how many codexes does Uthman send out? Muslims don't know. There are 5 opinions concerning how many he sent out. Some say 4, some 5, some 6, 7, or 8. They don't know. But actually, it doesn't matter. Yasser Qadi says, it is not a very great concern to know the exact number of mushafs that Uthman sent out. He chooses 5, but he doesn't really give any historical evidence. He just says, oh, it probably wasn't one sent to Yemen, Bahrain, and Egypt. Trust me, bro. So he says it's not important to know how many were sent out. However, he says the different mushafs that Uthman ordered to be written were not identical to each other. For in a number of places, the addition or deletion of a word or letter occurred in some of the mushafs. This change is reflected in the various qira'at or recitations in existence today. Because within these, there exist word changes and word additions that could not have originated from the same mushaf. So he's saying it's impossible that there is just one Uthmanic rasim. There are many, because there are word changes and word additions that it is impossible to have originated from just one. So the earliest Quran manuscripts is written like the top one. There are no dots to indicate consonants or vowels. So for example, you don't know, is it a kebab or a book? Because you don't have the dots. And then the theory that there is just one codex sent to each province can actually be disproven. So even given the theory that there were only 5 provinces, let me go back. Let's say there were 5, Medina, Kufa, Basra, Syria, and Mecca, because the 7 readers we have today are descended from those. There are 3 readers from Kufa. So let's say if there was only one codex sent to Kufa, there should only be one rasim, right? Well, actually, look at the second example. Do you see at the end, there is a little letter added. In the left side, we have Hafs Quran, and the right side, we have Hamza's Quran. Both were coming from Kufa. So both should have the same rasim. However, in the second example, we see there's a whole letter added. So it could not have originated from just one physical Quran sent there. The same with Kasai. Kasai also is from Kufa, and it has the same issue. Hafs Quran adds a letter at the end of the second and third examples, as you see. Okay, so that was regarding some of the what the Islamic story is, what the narrative is, and we saw there's some problems in the narrative. When we go to Hadith, there's also many problems. So the first issue we see is it is possible for Muhammad to forget verses. So we don't know if everything that he recited to his followers, maybe he forgot some verses when he was reciting to them. First Hadith, Bukhari, it says, there was someone who reminded him of such and such verses, which I was caused to forget. Now, was it Muhammad who just forgot? No. It says in the second hadith, why does anyone say, I have forgotten such and such verses? In fact, he is caused by Allah to forget. So why would God reveal something and then cause people to forget it? It's a little nonsensical. There are also missing verses and chapters. Aisha said, the verse of stoning and breastfeeding an adult 10 times was revealed, and the paper was with me under my pillow. When the messenger of Allah died, we were preoccupied with his death, and the tame sheep came in and ate it. So God versus sheep won. Umar, so this is Umar, second caliph. He said the verse of stoning was included in what God sent down to him. We read it and memorized it. The messenger of Allah had people stoned to death, and we have done it also since his death. I am afraid that people might say with the passage of time, we do not find the verse of stoning in the books of Allah, and thus they stray by abandoning a duty which Allah had received. Stoning is a duty laid down by Allah for married men and women. I swear by Allah, had it been not so that the people might say, Umar made an addition to Allah's book, I would have written it. So for some reason, people forgot to write it down, and then Umar said for sure when Muhammad was alive, we read it and memorized it, and we also practiced it. And even we practiced it after Muhammad's death. However, somehow it got left out of the Quran that we have today. Missing chapter. This is my favorite ones to show Muslims. They have no answer for this one. I haven't heard any answer for this. It says, Abu Harb, Abu al-Aswad reported on the authority of his father that Abu Musa al-Ashari sent for the reciters of Basra. They came to him, and they were 300 in number. They recited the Quran, and he said, you are the best among the inhabitants of Basra, for you are the reciters among them. So to continue to recite it. But bear in mind that your reciting for a long time may not harden your hearts as were hardened the hearts of those before you. We used to recite a surah which resembled in length and severity to Surah Bara'at, which is Surah Tawbah, chapter 9. I have, however, forgotten it with the exception of this, which I remember out of it. And then he quotes the verse from that chapter that he remembers. If there were 2 valleys full of riches for the son of Adam, he would long for a 3rd valley, and nothing would fill the stomach of the son of Adam but dust. So this, chapter 9 is about 130 verses long. So they used to recite a whole chapter in similar in length with this verse in it, and now this whole chapter is missing from the Quran. Qira'at. What is qira'at? How many of you have heard that word before? Oh, okay, yeah, you guys are pretty studied about this. For those who've never heard it before, qira'at is plural of qira'ah. It means recitation or reading. It is a system of reciting the Quran according to traditionally accepted variants belonging to each system. It is an oral system, differences in pronunciation, letters, words, and also written system, differences in spelling, orthography, and differences in verse numbering and the number of verses. There are general principles, but what we usually focus on is individual variants. There are even books called the 10 Qira'at, and it has listed all of the differences between the 10 readers color-coded. I think Pastor George has one, if you want to look at it after. What do we mean by the 10 readers? So Ibn Mujahid in 936 he died in 936 AD, so this is 300 years after Muhammad. He chose 7 readers from 5 cities. And then I would say 500 years later, Ibn al-Jazari added 3 more. There are 10 accepted readers. So does that mean there are only 10 Qurans? No. There are at least 20 Qurans, because each reader, we don't have his Quran. We only have what was transmitted from his students. And actually, there are differences between each student. So for example, if you see the red circle, the most common Quran is Hafs. There are differences between Hafs and Shu'bah. So why are there differences if each student was reciting and learned it from his teacher and, memorized it perfectly? Why are there still differences? That's a good question. Muslims don't have an explanation of this. Hafs is recited. This is from Yasser Qadhi's book. It was written in 1999, so it could be the percentage is a little different today. But he estimated 95% of Muslims use Hafs Quran. If you get an English and Arabic Quran, they will be using Hafs. To get one of the others, you have to find a specially labeled Quran. It is not common to find, because I think Muslims, it's easier to just have the one standard than try to explain all the differences to the Muslims. Here's an example of a difference. I like to use this because it's a whole word missing. So you see on the left, it has a word, it's 2 letters, and then it comes after the word for God, Allah. And then on the right, you have Warsh Quran. The letter in red is Allah, and then after that word, it doesn't have it, it's missing. So this is very significant. On the preserved tablet, does it have this word or doesn't it? If there's only one perfect Quran in heaven, it can't have the word and not have it. That's a law of non-contradiction, right? Something can't exist or not exist. Either I'm here or I'm not here. I can't both be here and not here. Another example of differences in Qira'at, we have a famous difference in chapter 1. So you see the highlighted word, and I made it a little bigger. on the one on the right, you see it has like a vertical line. This is called a dagger aleph. Why Muslims wrote it? Because they didn't want to tamper with the perfect Uthmanic Rasim. And so they kind of invented this spelling that normally it will be written like together in the word, but they didn't want to mess with it. So they just invented this spelling. But it creates a difference in meaning. Malik on the left means king, and Malik is owner. Tabari says it is forbidden and impermissible to say owner. Wow, so one of the biggest scholars of Islam, he says it is forbidden to say owner. Okay, when I talk to Muslims and show them the different Qurans, what they tell me is, oh, the Quran was revealed in 7 ways. Have you guys heard this when you talk to Muslims? Okay. We're going to look at the narrative about this. This is their attempt to explain. It is called 7 ahruf. They think it is their Superman, but actually it becomes their kryptonite. It presents more problems than it solves. Harf means letter in Arabic. So actually, the Quran, they said, is revealed in 7 letters. What does that mean? Before we look at what it means, we're going to see even the narrations about it is completely different. Where they came from, who revealed it to Muhammad is different. Okay, narrated Umar. So Umar and Hisham were both reciting the Quran at the mosque. When Umar heard Hisham reciting, he said, "Who has taught you this surah which I have heard you reciting?" Hisham said, "Allah's messenger taught it to me." I said, "You are telling a lie, for he taught it to me in a way different from the way you have recited." When they both went to Muhammad and both recited it in the different ways, Muhammad said, "The Quran has been revealed to be recited in 7 different ways, so recite of it whichever is easy for you." So he has said, it has been revealed. He doesn't say who revealed it, just it has been revealed, unspecified where it came from. Muhammad said, "Gabriel recited the Quran to me in one way. Then I requested him and continued asking him to recite it in other ways, and he recited it in several ways till he ultimately recited it in 7 different ways." So here he's saying, I asked Gabriel to recite it in other ways until they reached 7. So here he said, it has been revealed, and then he said, I asked it to be revealed in other ways. Similar. So here, Muhammad said, Allah has commanded you to recite to your people the Quran in one dialect. Muhammad said, I ask from Allah pardon and forgiveness. My people are not capable of doing it. So then near the end, it says, Allah has commanded you to recite to the Quran to your people in 7 dialects, and whichever they would recite, they would be right. So here it's saying God has commanded the 7 ways. Now we have Michael, the archangel, who said to Gabriel, teach him more until there were 7. So now it's coming from Michael. Similarly, Gabriel told Muhammad to recite the Quran in one mode, and Michael told him to ask more till he reached 7. I have a chart. You guys can download the PowerPoint and just compare the different narrations and see it's coming from Muhammad, Allah, Michael, Gabriel, and then just an unspecified angel. So you see, even the narrations don't agree with each other. Where did it come from? And I just want to know, in the first narration, remember Umar and Hisham, the ones who were disagreeing, they're actually from the same dialect. So it cannot be different dialects because they're from the same one. Okay, what does it mean? Muslims don't know what it means. Ibn Qutayba recorded 35 opinions and As-Suyuti listed over 40. Ibn Sa'dan said the true meaning of the ahruf was known only to Allah, and thus to attempt to investigate into this issue is futile. Ibn al-Jazari, the one who chose the three more readers, it says, Yasir Qadi calls him perhaps the greatest scholar of the Qira'at, said, I have sought to discover the meaning of these hadith about the ahruf and contemplated it for over 30 years. I think it is more difficult than like Einstein figuring out general relativity, because I don't think he studied that for at least 30 years. Or it's saying the ahruf is about that level of difficulty. In As-Suyuti's book, he says even what the word harf means, knowing the question of what harf means is a problematic one, and it is one which can never be answered. Then he lists he actually lists over 50 different meanings. When you look at these meanings, let's just look at them. It could mean an unspecified amount within single digits. It can mean up to 7 different ways per word. It could mean 7 Arabic dialects. It could mean 7 type of change in each expression. For example, change in vowel, change in verb, switching of 2 successive words, adding or subtracting word. 7 types of speech, which would be commandment, prohibition, allowed, forbidden, unambiguous and ambiguous verses, and parables. 7 aspects of grammar, 7 readings of the 7 companions, 7 kinds of behavior, which he says is coming from the Sufis. 7 phonological aspect, which would be like pronunciation. 7 sciences, 7 mothers of the letters, meaning just 7 letters that make up Arabic alphabet, and 7 names of God. So when you look at these, because there's no similarity, you can see they're just thinking of possibilities, but there's no evidence. They don't know what it means. However, this Islamic scholars for sure saying it does not mean 7 dialects or 7 qira'at, which is what, when you talk to Muslims, they're going to bring up. So what is a dialect? For example, in America, we say truck, right? In England, what do they say? They say lorry. So we say truck, they say lorry, but we're using 2 words, but they have the same meaning. However, in the Qur'an, we see different words which have different meanings. For example, in one Quran, it says, when you can't fast to feed a destitute or poor person, which is singular. And then in another Quran, it says you have to feed poor persons or destitute persons, more than one. One person is not the same as many people. Another way that it does not mean dialects, there are at least 10 different opinions on what dialects they would be. So Muslims don't know what dialects they had. I don't know, maybe someone can find, are there any Islamic or Arabic linguists that looked back then? I haven't seen any linguists that looked back and looked at the Arabic to say this part of the Quran is in this ancient Arabic dialect, or this part of the Quran is in a different one. I don't know if there's even historical evidence they can look at. Suyuti also says, referencing Umar and Hisham, both are from Quraysh. It is absurd to believe also that Umar did not know his own dialect. This proves that the meaning of the 7 harfs cannot be the dialects. It also does not mean the 7 readings or the 7 different Qurans. Many of the common people suppose that 7 harf refer to the 7 readings. This is just vile ignorance. Yasir Qadi also says, unfortunately, most of the Muslim masses understand the hadith of the ahruf to refer to the readings or the qira'at. And he also quotes Ibn Taymiyyah, another famous Islamic scholar, who says there is no difference of opinion among the scholars that the 7 ahruf are not the same as the 7 famous qira'at. So I just encourage you to show your Muslim friends these, quote these sources to them to show that their own scholars are the ones saying that what 7 ahruf cannot mean. This is Qurtubi, very famous scholar with a commentary. He says the 7 readings which are ascribed to the 7 readers are not the 7 ahruf. Are they preserved? Even Muslims don't know, are all 7 preserved today? Some say 1, some say all 7, some say a portion of the 7. Muslims also came up with an ad hoc explanation of why some verses and chapters are missing. They said that's an abrogation in the recitation. Who has heard the word abrogation before? Abrogation is when a later verse that was revealed supersedes an earlier verse if there's a contradiction. So at least 2 rulings must be involved. What abrogates and what was abrogated, which means there must be something that replaces what was superseded. So there needs to be 2 things. However, what Muslims are saying was that in the last year of Muhammad's life, Gabriel recited the Quran to Muhammad twice. And during this recitation, in this last recitation of the Prophet to Jibreel, there were 2 benefits. First, to strengthen and preserve the Prophet's memorization, and second, to affirm those verses that were not abrogated and to indicate which verses were. So he's saying the final recitation canceled the variations that are not found in the Quran today. How convenient. But according to the Quran itself, something can only be abrogated, replaced by something else. But this is referring to portions which are just deleted without something else replacing them. So it doesn't even follow what the Quran says the definition of abrogation is. Here's just another example. Surah Al-Ahzab used to be equal in length to Surah Al-Baqarah, which is it's like around 280 something verses. However, it's around 70 something verses today. So over 200 verses were lost. This implies that there existed many verses whose recitation have been abrogated. It is less than 1/4 of what is remaining today. But are these verses still part of the Quran and the preserved tablet? If they're still on the preserved tablet, why are they missing today? It means they actually still are part of the Quran that's in heaven. Implications. So remember how we saw that some Qurans have different letters, like a whole word is missing, but in the other one it has the word, so it's 2 more letters? Al-Tabarani reported on the authority of Umar that the Prophet said, the Quran contains 1,020,000 letters, and if you read it patiently and deeply, you will have 1 wife of the dark-eyed houris of paradise for every harf, every letter. That's a lot of wives. I'm sorry, like 1,020,000. And you saw in the Hafs Quran, there's 2 more letters. So I think that's a better one for Muslims. Maybe they want to recite that one instead. Another implication. This hadith said, Muhammad said, he who does not recite Fatihat al-Kitab, which is chapter 1, is not credited with having observed the prayer. Remember how we saw Tabari said the owner is not acceptable. So most Muslims are reciting it with that pronunciation. However, according to Tabari, their prayers are not accepted. Lastly, intercession. It says, recite the Quran, for on the day of resurrection, it will come as an intercessor for those who recite it. So it's saying the Quran that you recite will come as your intercessor. But how do you know you're reciting the right one? What if you're reciting the wrong one and then you don't have anyone to intercede for you on the day of judgment? So final thoughts, some things I ask Muslims. Which Quran is the one in heaven or the one on the preserved tablet? Another thing, you could ask them, which one did Muhammad recite? Another thing that's interesting, if Abu Bakr wore one Quran, where did the differences come from? So even if Uthman wrote different Qurans that he sent out, remember Abu Bakr only wrote one. Where did all the differences come from his Quran? And lastly, if Muslim leaders are lying about this to the everyday Muslim, what else are they lying about and keeping from them? A lot of things. Muslims believe that the Quran is a book that came down from heaven. It is perfect. It is preserved still in heaven, and it will come for them on the day of resurrection as an intercessor. But we can see it's imperfect. Parts of it are missing, and we don't have it today. But we have a perfect Savior, the one who came down from heaven and lived the perfect life for us. For such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and has become higher than the heavens, who does not need daily, as those high priests, to offer up sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the people's. For he did this once and for all when he offered up himself. For the law appoints as high priests men who have weakness, but the word of the oath, which came after the law, appoints the Son, who has been perfected forever. So let's point our Muslim friends to the perfect Savior who can save them, the one who never changes, who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. We were going to do questions, but we need to take a break before our workshop. So you can still ask Rachel privately. And then, so just look at your schedule to see which workshop you want to attend in about 10 minutes. And then right after that, immediately after that, we'll have dinner together. And then we'll come back for our final session. Okay?